great theme. It's like dun dun da 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 da. Dun, dun, da, 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 da. Dun, dun, da, da, da. Oh, it's so good. It sort of brings to the mind the majesty of the universe, the galaxies and all that kind of stuff. You can just imagine this beautiful panoramic view of the heavens from this piece of music. It really brings to mind a view of the night sky where there's just total darkness and you're outside a city and you're just looking at the full panoply of the stars. That's quite beautiful.
Imaginative.
You will love it. It's a real discovery.
You sold me. Gotta hear this.
Hello and welcome to the QUACKCAST. This is QUACKCAST number 506. I'm Ozen Ocean, and with me is Baines, Tance, and Pitface.
Hello.
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 Hello, you. All of you lovely people. This week we're talking about fight scenes. In comics mainly, of course, because that's what this website's about. But also, you know, in movies. Hey?
Yeah, sorry. I said, well, we're going to try to.
Yeah.
But we'll see if we can resist our siren song, just talking about movies and stuff.
Yeah, Star Wars fight scenes. That's what it'll end up with. No, but before we get into that, we'll have to talk about the featured comic. QUACKCAST featured a lovely little comic this week. It was called Strike Pup, which sounds like a fighting comic to me. So take it away,
I think
Cole.
it might be.
Hey?
I think it might be.
Yeah. Take it away, Kwai, with your Strike Pup.
Hello, this is QUACKCAST, and the feature I've selected for this week is Strike Pup by Bitter Badger, and it is rated M for mature. In the year 1986, Rose Remington was a rising star in women's martial arts. However, life threw her a few face punches that forced Rose to fall out of the International Fighting Championships. The only struggles she now faces are the large testosterone-filled opponents that she takes on in underground fight tournaments while balancing her life as a fashion model. Rose's martial arts trainer, now romantic love interest Ryu, has been by her side every step of the way. Strike Pup is, in every way, a comic with a strong and powerful female lead. The comic is drawn in full pages of black and white digital ink. The shading technique makes very good use of screen tones and cross-hatching, which really add depth to the pages, especially during fighting sequences. Leave the fighting in the ring and enjoy Rose's everyday normal life and read Strike Pup by Bitter Badger, rated M.
And that was Strike Pup, QUACKCAST, telling us all about this lovely, lovely webcomic by Bitter Badger. So, after that, we have the featured music. Gumwallis has given us a theme to Hitchhikers, I should say. Many hitchhikers. So, this is a comic by Fraggle Rockstar, rated E. And the musical feature, well, it's operatic depth versus simple country sounds of a banjo, reminiscent of The Journey of the Sorcerer by the Eagles, which became the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy theme, which shares a part of its title with this comic. That's totally deliberate. I don't think that was a coincidence. What's that?
Yeah. So which part? Don't hold back.
It's a secret. Gumwallis has given us this lovely homage to that famous tune, the contrast between the rustic simplicity of plucked strings and layered tonal depth. Take it away, Gumwallis, with Hitchhikers. that was Hitchhiker's Gummalus gave us the theme to the lovely comic by Fraggle Rockstar. Okay, so after that, we're talking about fight scenes. Fight scenes in comics, fight scenes in movies. This was inspired by the fact that we were having a chat about movies and TV shows we've watched. And I think it was Mozmid commented on Mozamad commented on the fact that a movie that she saw was, too obviously choreographed, and that it sort of spoiled the suspension of disbelief. It just seemed a bit silly, so she couldn't watch it. One of these fight scenes that is just too stylized, so that sort of can harm your suspension of disbelief. And I was just chatting to Baines and Pitt and Tance about the fact that a lot of modern movies now sort of follow the old-fashioned kung fu style of fight choreography, where the fight is very stylized, which contrasts quite nastily with the other parts of the film where the acting is naturalistic. So when you've got an extremely stylized fight scene, it doesn't look natural or real because it's too artificial. It's not the fact that, people say, oh, it's choreographed, because all fight scenes in movies, or almost all of them, have to be choreographed because you don't want people injuring each other. And you need to get the best camera angles and all this kind of stuff. And, to show people from angles where it looks like they're punching or chopping someone in half or whatever without actually doing that. So you have to choreograph stuff. But
freaking the union ruined everything.
Yes, exactly. And the fact that people want to stay alive. But the problem is that choreography can be too obviously on display when the fight scene is too stylized, in that, people are dodging at just exactly the right moment and, switching and shooting this person and then flipping over their shoulder to shoot that person and ducking this punch and all that punch. It's just too stylized. That, in a real fight, you don't get that kind of smoothness of action. In a real fight, it's like over in, 10 seconds or like a minute at the most. And it's very rough and chaotic and ridiculous. Like, actually, most fights, real fights, look terrible. They would be the worst thing to ever film because they're embarrassing and stupid, and people get killed in them. They're not, real fights aren't a joke, but they look like a joke. The only fights that ever look good are fights on film because they're made to look good. But yeah, real fights are deadly, but they look hilarious. So yeah, that's it's one of the weird kind of facts of that kind of thing. I've never seen a fight in reality that looks romantic and dramatic and cool. They all look dumb. I mean, people have seen fights in like UFC or like boxing and that, but then you've got trained fighters who train to do exciting moves. And these are very visually appealing looking, muscular kind of people, and they're wanting to entertain a crowd. So even if this is a real fight, they're not real fighters in that their purpose is to entertain a crowd. So even if they're really hitting people, I'm not saying they're not really hitting or not wanting to injure people or not getting injured themselves. They're trained specifically to be entertainers. So it's very different from a street fight, which is a real fight. And those are the kind of fights that
not graceful at all.
No, and those are the kind of fights you are depicting in film, like real fights.
Actually, you would be surprised how easy it is to cause injury. Going out with the Red Cross covering events, we have been witnesses to certain people, like to brawls, basically breaking out, especially in soccer games. And also we had like the latest one was really weird. It was at the tennis match, which is where you never get bros at the tennis match.
No. Wrong crowd.
And we were saying like, okay, we should have got that on video because it's so rare. But anyway, the thing is that it gets very nasty without really looking nasty. It looks basically like a shapeless waddle of people just
Yes.
and then they sway and shove and push and shove at each other, and then someone is on the ground, and they might be really, and it doesn't look very glamorous. It doesn't look very.
It's not exciting.
Yeah, it's not exciting. It's scary though.
Yeah.
It is scary because you see it happening, and but it's not glamorous, and it's not something that would look nice on a page.
Yeah.
At all.
No.
So.
No. Yeah. It's.
That's not to say that you can't make like casual street fights that aren't dazzling to look at, but don't make them boring, I guess. I don't know. I don't want to launch into do's and don'ts already with this.
Yeah, because then
I don't know. Like make it interesting somehow. I don't want to just watch. Like fight scenes are still cool if they're over the top. As long as it's, I don't know, like they're fun when they're what's the word I'm looking for? Super
stylized.
Yeah, like stylized or like, ridiculous or and some people are into them being just like, oh, like look at the way this guy did this and this. Like, there's an audience for that too. Just, I don't know, just don't wank your character stick and make them. I don't know. To make it interesting. I should be using examples and stuff, and I'm not, so this isn't good, but we'll think of some. Don't stop listening. I'm done talking.
Well,
I think it really depends on the style and the context of your story.
Yes.
Like, for example, if you have a fantastical element to it, and if you have established that your fighters do really dance-like moves, or they fly across the rooftops, or do that sort of thing, and it fits within the story, then it's fine. But if you have like a gangs of New York style setting, and you get people suddenly doing backflips or fly kick into the other or things like that, then it will look weird and silly.
Yeah. You don't contrast in style, like I was talking with the movies. If you got naturalistic acting, then to have stylized fighting is just dumb. But if it's stylized performance and stylized fighting, that fits great. That's why it worked in kung fu films, because it was all like that. That's why. So if you see Dragon Ball Z, which is all about fights, everything fits together. Even though the fights are very hugely big and bombastic, they're not odd. It's not like they don't fit. Everything fits, and that's what you'd expect. It's but say in I remember James Bond a few years ago. One of the ones, the second one with that that actor that everyone loved because of his Casino Royale performance.
Timothy Dalton.
George Lazenby, that's the one. No, whoever that guy is, that fellow, who's the James Bond at the moment. Yeah. Anyway, so there's this sort of, he's his tenure as James Bond is praised for being very naturalistic in acting style and very realistic. But the fights were complete. Daniel Craig, that's it. Thank you very much for that, Tance. The fights were the opposite of that. I mean, I remember just almost turning the movie off because these two, he was having a fight with some guy, and then they went into this, like they were doing parkour, for God's sake. Parkour. And they went into this high building, and then they were both hanging from a rope and like unwinding themselves like some freaking ballet performance of Cirque du Soleil, and fighting while they're unwinding. And I just thought, oh my God, whoever decided to choreograph this fight scene was a moron. This is stupid. This is a James Bond film. Don't have it turn into this kind of crap. Jesus. Like, like follow, if you're having a naturalistic performance and being gritty and real, then don't do that. It's like having a dance scene, you might as well just have a musical like the Jets and the Sharks, bloody West Side Story. That's just do that. Just do that and be done with it if you're going to do that kind of thing. Nothing wrong with that, but just be honest about it.
That would be really cool because it takes a lot of skill to choreograph a dance number that is also a fight. So if you have the chops to do that, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly.
The one thing that I wanted to mention is that even if you have people that are martial artists, and you want to make it realistic, because if you don't, then we go on a whole different range and palette of things. But if you want to keep it realistic, they will use the economical moves. The one thing that we were taught like I have dabbled in two kinds of martial arts, and in both of them, you go for the short and sweet, and especially the ones that are tailored to your size and to your capacity. So the martial art type of fight would be very short, very much going for the jugular, quote unquote, like trying to do minimal moves to get the maximum effect, and then probably scrum, like me. So, keep that in mind.
Right.
Yeah.
No high kicks. They go for the low and middle kicks, mostly.
High kick.
Or you could just go the other way, like you were saying with the unrealistic route, and just go full JoJo's Bizarre Adventure and people be fighting as they fall down like chimney stacks and just doing crazy things. I love it. Not just me, but it's one of the things why people love JoJo so much, is because of its outrageousness. But yeah, again, you have to kind of be aware that that's what you're going for, and that's the tone that you're going for and stuff. And something that I really like to see, especially in like the older movies and TV shows, because it seemed much more prevalent then, is I love seeing people fight who haven't necessarily been taught how to fight, like awkward punches and staggering around and stuff, and I like to see a degree of non-professionalism in fights. I think that's a lot of fun, especially like back in like the old saloon brawling scenes where a guy will swing way back before he takes a punch, just like or that kind of thing.
Yeah, the what do they call it, barn clear or something like that, the big roundhouse punches. Yeah, that's and sometimes they'll go to do that and then they'll totally miss and end up swinging around, and actually they do that all the time. They hit someone else and then they'll get a chair whacked over their head. Oh, jeez.
But I mean, that's something to consider when your character, like, if you're coming up with, like, how your character fights and stuff, consider, like, are they professional grade fighters? And if not, are they necessarily going to know everything about fighting? Are they necessarily going to be perfect at it? And that doesn't just go for getting hit, but that also goes for, I don't know, like maybe they'll try to do something like, they might deem as kind of clever, but they'll screw it up, or it might add a little bit more character to your character in the way that they fight, rather than just, you know, punch, punch, kick.
Like
sorry
Street Fighter.
to, yeah. I also like to see impact when people fight. I like to be able to kind of feel it, in a sense, and that's one of the reasons why I like the fighting in Kill Bill so much. Is I love seeing, like, Uma Thurman's character. She's a professional killer. She knows how to fight and stuff, but still during those scenes, you can see the way she exerts herself, and like, I love watching her in that role, because it doesn't just feel like, I don't know, stupid cat fighting or something. It feels like somebody is really exerting a lot of energy, and there's stakes involved. And when somebody gets hit or gets a body part lobbed out, well, that's funny when that happens, because then you have like the comedic blood splurting out and stuff like that. But like, there's just so much character in those fights.
Another thing that I really liked about Uma Thurman in Kill Bill was that although she's a petite, not petite, but she's relatively thin in her build, and I'm not sure how tall she is. But the thing is that she was not portrayed as a character that could physically outperform a person that was heavier and taller and physically stronger than her. She had to outwit them and or use other skills rather than physical prowess. And the thing that I want to connect to what Deirdre said is that she had to take physics into consideration to a point that is realistic enough, feels realistic enough, because she had to count on her strengths while factoring in her weaknesses as a fighter, which I really liked. That's one thing I wanted to underline.
Yeah.
And then we see when that fails too. Despite all of her prowess and everything, there's that scene. I guess spoilers, but that scene that she's going after, I forgot his name, Bill's brother.
Bud.
Bud, and he seems like he'd be the least equipped to take her, right? But what does she do? So she opens the door to his trailer and goes to run right in, and he blows her off with a shotgun. Blows her off. Better words.
He's like, I don't have time for you right now.
Yeah. He shoots her with a shotgun full of rock salt, and if he would have used a real bullet, she would have been dead that scene. Like, that was her mistake to charge in like that. And I just like to see that, you know, as effective and amazing as she's been, taking on, you know, the Crazy 88 and everything like that, she underestimated this opponent, and she paid for it.
Yeah.
That's kind of, I mean, this is tangent, but what makes me like Kill Bill 2 more is that stuff. She becomes more of an underdog. She does get outwitted, and she gets like really like put in a tough spot several times. And she does in the first one too, but I guess it's the second one it feels like smaller, and it's like more intense.
Yeah.
The ultra competent fighters aren't always so entertaining. if they take a bit of damage themselves, that makes them more relatable, and you sympathize with them more, because you think, oh, they're not just going through a video game being invulnerable. They're someone who can get hurt, so I care about them more. So there's that kind of aspect.
Yeah. I mean, both can be great, but yeah, that second one I definitely like more. It's more affecting, and it gets me on the edge of my seat. I mean, both are fun. I loved Kung Fu Hustle. If you guys have ever seen that movie,
No.
It's hilarious, and it's way over the top with the magical martial arts and the powers and stuff like that. It's great. And a lot of it is like the characters you don't expect to be the powerhouses are the powerhouses.
Oh,
it's really neat. Exaggerated. Recommended.
Speaking of that exaggerated magical stuff, I was just going to bring up the Big Trouble in Little China, where it starts off like there's a real sort of character and a real kind of setup, but it gets weirdly cartoonish. And that one really is a proper homage to Chinese kung fu movies. And even though the fights are very much stylized, they're meant to be, and it doesn't contrast with the rest. It's a homage, and it really works. Anyway, sorry, Tans.
No, I wanted just to use what Dane said to segue into the fact that it doesn't have to be to have the audience engage and enjoy a fight. Doesn't necessarily need to be realistic or even not stylized and stuff. But what I was thinking as I was listening to you guys is that they all share the same principles of having the fighters interact in ways that are compatible with each other, and the stakes are set up in a way that even the best fighter can fail, or they will feel the impact of the opponent if the opponent lands a blow. So, and I was thinking, right, if you take something super unrealistic and not the way fights work, which would be like Rooney Kenshin, which is one of my favorites, what happens in those fights is that they shout out the move name, the name of the move that they are going to do, and then they do. And then they stop and they talk and they wax lyrical about whatever issues they have, or they do lay out their philosophy, and then they say what the next move is. They shout out the title of the move, and then they attack on the move. And they do it, or even they shout out the name of this bombastic, spectacular move that they're going to do, and then the onlookers comment on it. Oh my God, this is this has been unbeatable. It can never be beaten. It's basically, it feels a little bit, if you think about it, and you're not actually, immersed in the episode. It's like the kids. With their dolls, where they are explaining to the other kids, like, this move is super duper awesome, and it's going to do this and this and that, and then they go into the move. So it feels a little bit like this. However, that said, although it is super ridiculous when described, when you are actually in that particular universe and watching the episodes, it feels legit, so to speak. It
fits.
You don't find it ridiculous within the particular story and the way that it is set up, mainly because the way the mechanics, let's say, the mechanics of the fight work exactly as they would if the fight was very realistic. You still have people within the fight have to be very careful, because if they slip up, it's not going to work. If it doesn't work and the land is going to be devastating, or, so on and so forth. It is a matter of skill. It is a matter of whether everyone is honorable or not honorable. If they play dirty, it has different outcomes, so on and so forth. So the two elements I would say in fight scenes is whatever you choose to do in terms of the fighting, just stick to it and keep the same for everyone, because in Genshin everyone has moves with titles and everyone shouts the titles. It's absolutely mandatory to shout out the title, like a spell almost. I'm going to do like a, no, they don't say I'm going to do that. They say, oh my God, I haven't watched one in years and I forget.
Striking swallow.
Like, yes, something like that.
Perverted octopus.
And everyone has these the schools of martial arts, and everyone has their strengths and weaknesses, and have like they stick to that thing, like it's not, and that's their reality. Period. So, and that's fine, because as a viewer, you suspend disbelief, and when you hear the move being called, you get excited if you know what it is, because you say, "Oh my God, he's going to do that, and now it's going to be awesome."
Yeah,
because
beat the last guy.
Yeah. Yes, the best animations come in certain moves, and you know that, oh, okay, now we're getting to the good stuff, or stuff like that.
Well, that's the thing. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say that's the thing about it's stylization, and that means that the fight moves are actually quite symbolic, and they don't actually always represent a fight. They represent conflict, basically. And so when someone says, okay, like Blue Eyes White Dragon or whatever, some sort of thing, that's what that actually means to you. Isn't that he's going to do this this move or this thing, and this is going to happen. What that actually means to you is you're thinking, oh, well, like you were saying, this kind of animation will happen, but there's also, oh, this is a thing that is normally unbeatable, and then what would normally happen is like he would triumph, and the story would move on, or this character would be humbled or whatever, and then it will be you're interested in seeing how this other character is going to counter that, because at this point in the story it shouldn't be over so quickly. So what's going to happen is they're going to be in advance. Maybe that thing won't work on this character, so this character will have to do something else, and then maybe he'll learn a new move or something like that. So that's what that means to you, rather than depicting a real fight where you don't think about those kind of things. You're just thinking, oh, I'm just going to watch the fight and see what happens. So yeah, it's there are other levels to that kind of stuff. So it's not just all silly, calling out names and in a very childish way. It's the fights work in a different way in anime and those kind of Japanese things. I mean, that's my impression of it anyway. It's not literal like a normal fight scene would be like in an American cartoon or a Western movie.
Speaking of that, an example of where it looks bad would be in the newest Mulan, that is a real action, live action, where you have suddenly you are introduced to the movie as if it will be a very realistic historical representation of an era, and so on and so forth. And then suddenly you get the Chinese fairy stories, fight where they fly off or they walk up walls and things like that. Which is it completely throws you off, because it has not keep you in that this is going to be the level of realism.
Right.
Uh-huh. So that is the problem. The fighting they chose, the fighting style, the fight scene style that they chose itself is not the problem. It's that they tried to shoehorn it into something that required different types of fighting to be consistent.
So you have a mismatch between the action and the acting and the fights. Yeah. Which is, how about we've talked about a lot about the movie stuff. What about in the comic kind of arena when you're depicting fights? We talked about this in the Patreon video actually, but so your comic fights, what have been your?
Yeah, I was thinking like I haven't drawn a ton of. Sorry, man.
No, go. Sorry.
I noticed. I mean, one of the few things I notice about action, other than whether I'm enjoying it or not, is there's a point to it. You kind of know what's going on. There's a context, whatever. But it's like the way, like the poses that are chosen or the moments that are chosen in comics are often like the extremes. And I agree that I like seeing the impact, like in a movie, like having powerful impact. I notice that almost always. It's the follow through that you see. It's like if someone punches someone in the jaw or something, say, you're not seeing the impact usually. You're seeing the full extension, like past the full follow through of the punch when the arm is fully extended, or when the sword is fully extended past the moment of striking, or you see the character rearing back, like drawing back with their sword. You're seeing like the extreme poses. Or say the character up in the air, or the the aftermath, like the injury or the pain or the whatever after a strike,
head chopped off, that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, but that is one thing I notice. Unless it's like really intense, where you have a close up and that move I always used to do in school, where I would stab someone and I was like really close to them, and I. Like the blade is like under their ribs and like we're shaken, and I'm giving them the strength guy. Yeah.
And then you go after their family once they're out.
That's right, exactly.
Carve your name in blood on the wall.
Yes.
Sure. That you don't care if that the authorities knew it was you. And
exactly. Yeah. I mean, theoretically speaking.
Follow through.
Yeah. It's all about the follow. Yeah.
Oh, you monsters.
But no, I do notice those two things. It'd be like a tight close-up, like a thing of facial expression, or it would be the extreme poses, like the pullback, the follow-through. Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, though, because comics, as its own art medium, it really matters which points in action we choose to depict, and so that's why it is so important, especially if you're making a comic. It does have a deal of action in it, to practice anatomy beyond, portraitures and people kind of standing and looking pretty. Get out there and sketch everything, and there are so many references online too that you can use, and of course everyone's always like, oh, it's optimal to have a real model, but we don't all have access to that, especially during times like this, so you just got to use what's available. But not digressing too much, it's super important to just kind of watch the way people move, and nobody is an island either. Your characters won't be in a voidless vacuum unless you indeed write them in a voidless vacuum. And so when people fight, say they fall up against something or stumble back or hit somebody with a pool stick or something like that, that affects the environment too, so study anatomy and the way people move, whether they're swinging or whether they're being hit, And you know, whether you get hit in the stomach is going to make you move differently than if you get like hit under the jaw, you know, or where that punch is coming from and stuff like that. And that's not to say that you have to have it all down to a perfect science, but if you can understand the basic flow of movement and how that impacts things, that's going to make your fight scenes, however they're being done, whether it's melee or sword fights or whatever, it's going to really help convey a lot of just worthwhile stuff in your comic.
Yeah, it's hard to make action flow when you're doing a fight, and you have to be aware of a lot of things. Yeah, like Pitt's saying, like the space that the fight's happening in, and if there's people around, other environmental factors, and you know what happens from this panel to this panel. Do we change views? And if you change views, do you depict the exact same scene from a different view, or do you depict the next point in time from the same view, or from a different view? And if you do from a different view, like, you know, where are those people situated now? It's quite tricky to do. I've done that, once or twice, and it's a huge challenge. So what I would advise, if you're going to do that, you should like choreograph it out very carefully. Think about it in your head, and then, thumbnail it out and do a couple of different versions of, how this scene would look from different angles, and then pick the best one. Because that's not straightforward to do that kind of thing, to do it like a logically flowing fight scene from panel to panel. It's tricky.
And it's also like, are you using motion lines? Do you use a blur? Do you write in an onomatopoeia or what? That's like a sound effect or whatever, or do you leave that to the imagination? There's like all these sort of choices that'll like change the vibe of it.
Yeah, like motion
really
lines.
Neat.
I mean, how do you show a punch? Like, you can't just draw someone in the act of a punch, because are they just holding their fist there, or is it traveling through the air at a great rate of speed? So then you do maybe speed lines, like you were saying, to show which direction it's going in. So then you have,
or maybe like a little impact bazam thing, like they do, where what do you call them? It's like a little I don't know what it's called. Like
the manga thing where it's like
sound
lines
effects
coming out from the middle spot.
Yeah, it's kind of like, it almost looks like a little outline of like
a bit like an erupting star.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the little kind of little star thingy. I know for one, I'm so bad at movement lines and speed lines. I don't like using them at all, but I like seeing when other people do them and when they do them well, but I just feel like I don't have a handle on it. I probably could do it if I really sat down to learn it, but I like to have little debris trails. I think that's how I kind of show, I put little dots. I don't think that's kind of effective enough for what I do, but I'm so bad at those kinds of expressions that suggest movement, but I think they're good tools to have for our medium, to know all the different ways there are of expressing movement out there.
Yeah.
Another thing that I think is important is to pick and choose carefully, when you are drawing that punch, where you choose to draw, in what stage of this punch you choose to draw your characters is important, because, for example, you could have the more poetic, quote unquote, I guess, fully extended punch, and the punch has taken place, and the person being punched is already recoiling, or you could have them drawn at the impact of the punch. And I have noticed that usually artists choose they draw like the punch actually pressed against the face, and the face is reacting to this to the impact of the punch. And I have seen this either happen for comedic purposes, or if the character being punched is especially hated.
Okay.
If this character has drawn a lot of the ire, either of the characters or the audience or both, then they have the highest chance that I have seen. Like this is, I cannot prove it. It's from my experience to have them shown being actually punched, like show the fist against the cheek or the jaw or the nose, whatever.
Yeah.
Or maybe that also is like the level of emotional gratification or pain that the audience is going to feel is when it depends is a factor on how you are going to depict this punch, like what point in the whole progression of the punch is going to happen. That's one thing. The other thing is that it is to your best interest to direct the instances, like every panel of the fight that you are making, to have the same direction, like from left to right, or from right to left. And the progression of the panels going in the same direction, and that helps the audience follow the action and be immersed into the action a lot more. That I have seen, at least.
Okay.
Yeah, it's tricky when you're doing that because you don't. Fight scenes have a lot of challenges. You don't want to do the Street Fighter thing where people are facing each other across the panel and moving towards and back and yeah, that kind of thing. So it's tricky. One thing I was going to say was if you're going to show a punch or a kick or whatever, you have to choose angles where speed lines are going to work most of the time. Because some angles, they're not going to work, and then it's just going to look like a held fist, and there's no way to change that. So you have to be aware of that. It's tricky, not straightforward. One of the best fight scenes drawn ever in comic on Drunkduck was Kaiupol's Killer Instinct, or whatever he called his comic. I can't remember, but it was some kind of strange story about alien or demons or something like that coming to Earth and inhabiting people and them getting into fights. But he would depict these fights just incredibly with such violence on a comic page. It was, oh my god, so affecting, because he would show characters with their fists being blurred so it looked like they were doing multiple punches at a time. It was so effective. It's probably the most effective fight scenes I've seen in any comic. And we, of course, can't fail to mention the comic called Fight, which is another fighting comic on Drunkduck, which we promised to review years ago. So this is a comic where all these sort of different disparate characters come together to fight. And it's the very epitome of a fight comic. So you should check out Fight. It's one of our sponsors for the Patreon videos. So Fight is a great piece of work.
Awesome.
It's highly recommended. Yeah, there are lots of different aspects to think about with drawing fight scenes. It's, for my other big fight scene that I did with Pinky TA was the Tromper battle between Ace and Pinky. So this is fights within mecha. So that involves things like, use of weapons, rockets and machine guns, and what can happen during that as you run through your arsenal of rockets, and then how can you damage this mecha if you don't have rockets to do it with? because these are great big metal, armored machines, and machine gun bullets just aren't going to do it. So it had to fall back on Pinky's intelligence and desperation to how she could defeat this other mecha without, weapons to do so. So that was interesting, and it was enabled me to develop, drama and tension just based on a fight, nothing else. Which is what you can do. You don't always have to develop drama and tension through stakes and through character conflict and all this kind of stuff happening. All you have to do is show a fight. So it's an interesting thing to use, but not easy, which is why we don't just have fights after fights after fights. What have been your favorite fight animes or fight movies? I'll bring up one. Baki the Grappler. Ridiculous over-the-top fights. Well, I recommend it if you want to see completely over-the-top fights, the kind of ones where people call out the name of the attack. But in this particular anime, they take ridiculous damage. Just, the damage they take is bizarre. Like, there's this one guy who's this insane fighter that in order to show off, he chews bullets, and the bullets explode in his mouth and blow out his cheeks. So he has holes in each side of his cheek from doing that. So it wasn't just him showing off, how he can eat bullets. It actually, had a bit of a toll of the damage that it would do him. And yeah, these characters actually suffer damage when they do their ridiculous moves. So it's a weird mix-up between the hyper-stylized, ridiculous kind of bombastic fights, but also people actually taking damage from it and that changing them. So it's good to watch just for that. In a lot of things, You'll see people doing, having these ridiculous fights and only being finished off in the final move. None of the other hits really affect them. They wipe a little trickle of blood from their chin with their thumb and say, "Is that the best you can do?" I've been holding back until now. Now it's time to take it seriously.
That all you got?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Or when one of the guys suddenly says, "I know something you don't. I'm not left-handed."
The Princess Bride move. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I know something you don't. I'm not left-handed either. Those are the classic things. Well, that's another classic thing. Sure, you can have that kind of level of comedy and stylization, and it works. It fits in with the story. But don't do it in a serious story, or else you're going to mess it up.
Well, you can. It can be done in a serious way. Is that all you got? I won't go on and on about it again, but in Better Call Saul, the early seasons, there's a scene with the old guy Mike who starts a fight on purpose, and there's a "is that all you got" moment, and it's friggin' intense. It is intense, man, because of the motivations of what's going on, and one of them being way stronger and crazier than the other, and just what's going on dramatically. That's what that really is. One character starts, maybe you don't know who's on top. Someone makes a little headway and then they're overmatched. There's a whole dramatic arc to a fight that you care about. It's kind of to do with the story and also the arc of the fight itself. There's a kind of a story to a fight.
Yeah.
That makes it interesting.
It's like a compact version of building up the tension and having a catharsis and all that kind of stuff. It all happens just within the fight. which normally you'd have to do a lot more work for all that kind of stuff. This is a super compressed version of that.
I do love Indiana Jones's fights. They're often somewhat short, but there's some nice ones. But there's always a moment, much as I love Raiders of the Lost Ark, it's one of the greatest movies ever, but there's one fight, I think it's maybe the big bald Nazi, who hits there's one moment where he hits him, and there's a slight pause, and then Indy like spins around. He like pirouettes around. It's very silly looking. I forgive it, but I always, every time I watch that movie, it's like, oh man, maybe you want to take another shot at that, to shoot that one more time.
Yeah, it is a very fun film, and that scene is very intense because they have the environmental factor of the plane engine starting up.
Yes.
And people moving worryingly close.
Yes. If you watch it, look for that moment early in the fight, I think it is, where he punches him, and then, like, sort of unmotivated, like, Indy puts his arms up in the air and spins around. It's very...
I just wanted to make this a little fabulous.
Exactly. Yeah.
Turn and turn.
Well, I don't know how much you could call this a fight scene in the classic sense where you just have two brawlers. But I've always liked the final scenes from the original Predator movie where it's just Arnold facing off against the Predator. And they don't have a lot of up-close hand-to-hand times like that, pretty much because whenever Arnold gets in range, Predator's going to kick his ass. He's huge. He's bigger. So, but, like, I love the whole kind of cat and mouse that goes on as Arnold has to stay ahead so that they don't engage that way and set up all those traps. So it's still a conflict going on, but it's one where he's actively trying to avoid getting in that closed combat situation. And it's also, those are very long scenes. That's a big part of the movie. You don't realize, well, I'm not saying you don't realize, I didn't realize it for a long time until I kind of looked at how long it was going on, but I always loved watching it. So that's something that can have something long and drawn out like that, although it's not, face to face, hand to hand, but it still remains really engaging.
Because it's strategic and it's fun to watch that strategy evolve, and you can see what he's thinking because there's the huge log trap that he's trying to trick him into to getting in to crush him, and like all that kind of stuff. The booby traps. Actually, now you mentioned Schwarzenegger, he has a lot of good fight scenes in his films that aren't too stylized, that are quite well done. Say, one of my favorites is Conan the Destroyer. No, Conan the Barbarian. Conan the Destroyer is good too. It's fun. But in Conan the Barbarian, they have this fantastic fight scene towards the end with the swords and the axes and that kind of stuff, where they're beating the Thulsa Dooms to goons who are after them, and chopping and slashing and cutting, and it looks quite real because it's quite brutal and it's very simple. There's not like lots of chop back and forth, ting 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 ting. It's just chop and making someone fall over straight away, and in that it's quite realistic in the way it's done, and luring people into traps and stuff like that. So there's that strategic element as well. It's a really great fight scene to watch towards the end of Conan the Barbarian. Even Conan the Destroyer has a great fight scene in the beginning where the evil queen's men are trying to get Conan, and him and his sidekick are fighting against them, and in this field, and they're trying to wrap him up in these nets and stuff, and does a lot of kind of cool moves. So yeah, I recommend that as a fun fight scene. Not over the top, not too stylized. It's just simple and brutal and easy to follow. So those kind of fights are fun to watch. The balletic stylized stuff has its place, but yeah, it's overused these days. Yes, these guys are talking about how I'm dying at the moment because I'm so tired.
And you did also mention Rocky. We should give it a little shout out because we brought up Rocky. I have a little story about that. When I saw Rocky, I think it's Rocky 5, which for a long time was the last one. And it ends. He can't beat the younger guy. He's kind of mentoring this kid, and the kid turns into a dick or whatever. I think he beats Rocky in the ring, but the climactic fight is like a street fight. And I thought at the time, like, this is awesome. Like, I thought it was so cool. And then later found out that absolutely everyone hated it. I thought it was the corniest, dumbest thing ever. I was like, oh, I thought it was awesome. It's really long, like, street fight is the climax of that movie. And of course, Rocky kicks his ass in the street.
I haven't seen any Rocky film. Just bits and pieces. Weird.
Oh, really? I haven't seen any of the new ones that are supposed to be so good.
Really?
Like Rocky Balboa, which I would love to see, and then the Creed movies, which apparently are really good. So, see those.
The only pseudo Rocky film I saw was Grudge Match, which is a film with Sylvester Stallone and De Niro. And the idea is, we finally get a crossover between Raging Bull and Rocky. Oh, wow.
Is that what I heard about that. I haven't seen it either.
It's like it's written by a 14-year-old. It's so bad. Yeah. Literally. It does seem that it is written by a 14-year-old because it's the kind of the dialogue is very 14-year-old dialogue. And the verbal conflict and all this kind of stuff.
Come out wherever you are.
Yeah, it's just Stallone and De Niro are embarrassing in that film. Yeah, so a film for money, and the only reason it exists is money, and it's terrible. But yeah, I tried watching the first Rocky, and that is. It's very old-fashioned, very 1970s, very ropey, so it's hard to get into.
Yeah, it's a character story. Like a lot of the others are more fight-oriented. A lot of people love Rocky 3. I know that. I don't remember it that well. Rocky 4 was huge.
Okay, so
fighting the Russian Drago.
Yes, good old Lundgren, Dolph.
Yeah.
Back in the heyday, he was always a big fight guy in his films. He was the new Schwarzenegger, the Erzas Schwarzenegger. Back in the day, yeah, he was very, very strange. Well, I think we've covered quite a bit. I'm not sure if you guys think we should. Cover anything else? We're at the 1 hour and 8 minute mark at the moment in the unedited cast.
Perfect.
All right, we'll wrap it up.
Ring the bell.
Ding, ding, ding. I'm done, guys. I'm on the mat. Count down to 10 and I won't be rising. So. All right. Thanks for listening to the Fightcast.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.